Have you ever wondered why men seem to lose interest in you right after they meet you in person? Isn't it confusing to wonder what you did or said that made his energy change towards you instantly? Well, what if I told you bringing the right energy to a date could drastically change the type of energy you receive from him afterward? Which is why on today's show, we're going to be discussing how to make men fall in love with your energy. That way you can learn how to cast a spell of obsession on men that will hold his interest in you forever. Point number one is about interest and disinterest. Now, the reason for that is because whenever we're talking about energy, we're really talking about feelings and emotions. Now, interest and disinterest are like both sides of the coin that we really want to be paying attention to in terms of giving men a particular feeling. Now, when we're thinking about interest, what does that translate to in terms of a feeling for men? It makes them feel very important. Important in what sense? Like they matter. Like you care about what they have to say, like what they have to say even matters, like they're important to this conversation, they're important right now, they're important to you. What that also translates to is allowing them to feel seen. Now, I'm not talking about being seen with your eyeballs, even though I know your eyeballs are amazing. I'm talking about being seen in the sense of, hey, I actually understand you. I understand what you're going through. I understand your story. I understand your life. I understand your faults. I see you for who you truly are as your authentic self, not a mask that you have to put on for me in order to look good to me or appear amazing to me. Now, the other thing that you want to kind of think about, right, is in terms of interest, right, is the ability for men to feel like you are present in this conversation, like you actually enjoy being here and there is nowhere else taking up your attention that you would rather be spending your time doing. There is no one else you would rather be spending your time with, that you are present in this conversation and in this moment because this is the most important thing to you. Now, when we look on the other side of the coin and we think of disinterest, right? If interest is going to make a man feel important, well, then obviously disinterest is going to make him feel very unimportant. Obviously, when a man feels very unimportant, he feels a lot smaller. His ego is a lot less stroked. He doesn't feel like, he matters or that he's the best thing since sliced bread. His ego obviously takes a little bit of a hit. There's also a lot of what we can describe as uncertainty when guys feel that you're disinterested in them. When they feel like they're not the most important thing anymore, they start to think to themselves, well, is it because she doesn't like me anymore? Is it because I'm not fascinating? Did I say something wrong? Did I do something wrong? Did I hold my fork the wrong way? Did I talk to her in a way that turned her off? Am I just turning her off in general? What could it be? This uncertainty can be a very anxious time for men in their relationship with you. Now, the other thing here, you also make men feel like you have other priorities. Like because of this uncertainty that he feels from your disinterest, that could mean that you're interested in another man. And if you're interested in another man, then that definitely means you have other priorities. It could also mean even if you aren't dating another man or have interest in another man, maybe you just have things to do that are better than the things that you're doing or going to do with this guy. Now, why is this important? Because I know the first thing that you're asking me is, okay, Tomisin, I hear you talking about interest and I hear you talking about disinterest. But I feel like if I say this, even though it sounds good, this might boost his ego too much and he might have his head blown up because of how much interest I'm showing him. But I also feel like if I do all of this, won't he think I don't like him at all? Won't he even think in some cases I hate him or want him to literally go away and stop speaking to me? Well, the thing about this is you're not actually ever going to pick one or the other. The funny part about giving men the right energy is in order to do this properly, you actually have to do both of these things at the right times. Number two is about timing. Now, I'm going to address how we want to give interest and how we want to give disinterest in a way that hopefully you'll understand, right? So when you think about something in a simpler ideology, like a roller coaster, it looks kind of like this in a sense. Okay, not perfect, but you get the idea. Now, what's the whole idea in psychology behind a roller coaster? I know we're not in a theme park, but I want to explain to you this idea, right? The whole idea of a roller coaster is there will be peaks and there will be valleys. Because if your roller coaster were like this the entire time and it just went really fast, sure, you'd have a roller coaster that goes really fast, but it wouldn't give you the same type of thrill that a roller coaster would that has peaks and valleys, especially if those peaks and valleys can be really, really extreme. So how do we apply this to the way that you show interest and disinterest? See, the thing about it is, because they are on opposite sides of the spectrum, you're going to use them the same way a roller coaster would use them for a thrill. You're going to have peaks when you want to show interest, and you're going to have valleys when you want to show disinterest, okay? So the reason that we want to do that is because we want to create a scenario in which there is contrast. That scenario in which there's contrast will make him have euphoria in experiencing you, but it'll also make him feel some uncertainty in experiencing you. Now, I know the first thing that some of you are saying, Tomisin, that sounds very toxic. That sounds like a hot and cold method. No, I do not want you trying to give him a hot and cold method. I want you understanding how emotions work so that you can understand at certain times it's okay to give him a feeling of disinterest, even though you're not doing anything toxic. And understand on the opposite sides of the coin, there's also times where it's okay for him to feel your interest and investment, because we want that contrast to exist in his life in order for him to feel you and be magnetized to you and your aura. So how do we kind of do this in a timing sense? When we go out on your dates, I don't know if I have any more room here, right? We want all of your dates in person, right? In person. Whether it be a date, a hangout, whatever you want to call it. We want all of those to be your peaks, so to speak, right? Your peaks or your interest times. These are the times where we want him to feel the most like, oh, she's really invested in me. She really sees me. She's really paying attention to me. She's really present here. I have her attention and I have her focus, right? I'm important to her. We also want the valleys to come when you guys are not together, okay? So meaning whenever you guys are away from each other, whether it be because you guys both have a work thing to do, whether it be because you guys are hanging out with your own individual friends, whether it be because you went on a work trip, that's when we want him to feel some disinterest in you. Now, I warn you, even in this time here, there are going to be some times where in the process of you guys being not together, we do want to make him feel a little bit of interest. So I won't lie to you. There are other points where you might not be together, and I still want you to make him feel a little bit of interest, but we'll get to that at the end as well. But in a basic sense, what I want you to kind of think of when we're thinking of peaks and valleys, I want you to think peak is interest, is in person, valley is disinterest, meaning not together. Now, like I said, that doesn't necessarily mean that in this timing, we're purposely going to try and give him pain or suffocate him or do anything to try and hurt him purposely, right? It's not necessarily a game. But we want to understand that anxiety, even in itself, when your man is feeling it, especially when you're supposed to be having a valley, is not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, anxiety, the feeling of disinterest for men, especially when you're away from them, can actually be so good for intensifying these peaks. Now, our point number 3 is about the feeling. Now, what you want to understand whenever we're talking about energy, whenever we're talking about something intangible that you can't really touch and feel, it's all about understanding how emotions will flow, how feelings will flow, and how you can elicit a feeling or emotion within the man that you're dating. Let's kind of draw out something here so we can kind of think to ourselves, or I should say visualize to ourselves, how we elicit a particular feeling in a man, okay? This is the thing about interest. Remember I said to you, one of the categories or points about interest, you want to make him feel important, you want to make him feel seen, you want to make him feel like he's the man, and you want that to come when you guys are actually together in person on this date. What is the feeling you're trying to elicit so that you can understand the type of energy you're going to be bringing to this date? Let's think of a man's life. in a general sense so we can understand what you're trying to do on this date. When a man goes out into the world, he has a whole bunch of responsibilities, connections, friendships, relationships that are platonic and, maybe romantic even, right? So let's think of some of the things that he has to deal with in life. He's got his boss, right? Which he has to do a lot of giving to, right? He has to do things for his boss, like projects and work and assignments and all that good stuff, right? He might have things like his mom, who needs him, wants to spend time with him. Maybe he's a little bit of a mama's boy. He might have other things like family, just in general, brothers and sisters. Maybe he's the oldest in his family. He has some responsibilities in terms of that. And then obviously he has his friends. He has different things here that he has to be giving to, because you got to give to a lot of these, right? And let's just be so for real. Even when he's with the boys, a lot of times they're going to be doing boy activity. Now, let me let you in as a man. Most of the time, boy activity does not consist of sitting down and talking about our feelings. It might sound toxic, but that's just not what us men naturally do when we're around each other. At least most of us. Maybe some do, but most of us don't do that when we gather around each other. So the reason I'm pointing this out to you, and I want you to take notice of this, is notice how a lot of these connections are based on giving. Give, do things for, take action for my fam, my mom, brothers, sisters, my boss, the boys, we do things together. But how many of those connections are actually returning any of that attention back to him? And when I say returning any of that attention back to him, I really mean, like, how many times do you think his boss is really saying, John, I just want to let you know you are such an important part of this company. We could not do or progress anywhere without you, and the ways that you've come in clutch for us. You are invaluable to the success of this company, and I just want to thank you for your contributions. How many times a day do you think that man hears that from his boss? Probably zero, okay? So, and think about it in his other friendships and relationships. How many times do you think he's really ever getting sat down by anyone in his life and getting told, I really, really appreciate you. I see you. I want to understand you. I want to hear you. I want to soak you in. This is your time to be you and share and just not worry about being anything except yourself. How many times do you think a man actually experiences that in any one of these relationships, even the ones that aren't on his board? Probably little to none for most men. So here's the thing that you want to understand, and this is how it relates to you. If this is an experience that he's rarely ever getting from anyone else in his life, how much do you think you can stand out in a man's mind if you become the first person to make him feel like he's actually important? And I don't mean important in the sense of, oh my God, you got big muscles, you're a big muscle man, you're so hot, you're so sick. No. I'm talking about actually feeling like he matters. Actually feeling like his contributions matter, actually feeling like he's important, like people care about him, like people want to hear what he has to say, how his mind works, what he thinks about this, what his opinions are, what his perspective is. How many people in his life do you think are even asking those type of questions? So the reason that I say that is if you want to bring the type of energy that's going to make men fall in love with you and become invested in you, we want to give him the feeling that he rarely ever gets from other people in his life, okay? And in terms of this feeling, right, you want to make him feel like he matters. Making someone feel like they matter sounds very simple in, ideology, but when you're actually applying it and thinking about it, how do you make someone really feel like they matter? Are you sitting down with that man and making sure that he feels like this time is for him to talk about himself, to share about himself, to be honest about his perspective, to tell you things that he's never told anyone, to make this a super safe space? It's not about, and someone said boosting their ego, right? It's not about boosting their ego from the standpoint of making them feel like they're so amazing, like no one is as amazing as them. It's about helping them see that this is a place where you actually get to be you. And instead of worrying about how you're going to give and do more and do this and do that and how I'm going to take from you, this is a place where you just get to be yourself. Lay out in the sand and just bask and just share and be free to express. When you give a man that feeling, you make him feel like he actually matters. Something that, I know it sounds very sad, a lot of men aren't really going to be feeling in their life, even with their boys, right? They might play basketball with their boys, they might play video games with their boys, but I can promise you, him and his boys even are rarely ever going to be sitting down and his boys are going to be saying, "Hey, John, how do you actually feel today? What's been going through your mind? What are your deepest fears? What are you scared of for the future?" Now, point number 4 is about listening. This can be an idea that feels easy in concept, but when I point this out to you and we actually take some notes on this, we'll see why there's actually a strategy to listening in a way that's very beneficial or works well or elicits that feeling that I talked about in the previous point versus listening in the bad way that's not really going to do or have the effect that you want it to have, okay? Eye contact is so good and so vital to making people feel like you're paying attention. This is the thing that you might not notice. And actually, I'm gonna even put this on the bad side here because it just popped in my mind and I wanna make sure I address this. Anytime a phone is involved, it will make someone else feel subconsciously like you're not present. This can be an easy mistake to make, and I'm telling you this as someone who's made it. Anytime you go on a date with a guy, I want you to have the phone in the bag. Okay? I don't mean have the phone on the table where it's close to you and face down. No. Have it in the bag. Because this is a really weird thing that's happened to us Gen Zers and maybe even the millennials that have had phones for a while as well. See, the phone can become a subconscious message to someone that, hey, I either enjoy in this conversation, which is why my phone is away, or I am slightly disinterested in this conversation, which is why my phone is close by or on the table where I can access it if I ever kind of fall out of interest in this conversation. So this is the thing that I want you to be very aware of, right? You might not, because you might be so used to just casually picking up your phone and texting or answering messages or whatever the case may be, you might not realize how every time you pick up this phone, it breaks the feeling of interest that we want to create. It breaks the illusion, so to speak, that you are someone who wants to be here, wants to be present, and is actively like enjoying this conversation. So I'm not saying that you can't ever answer someone that's important or whatever the case may be, but my advice to you is if you want to do active listening properly, I shouldn't even say active listening, just the listening part properly, you want to make sure you take care of things that need to be taken care of before the date so that when you get to the meat and potatoes of the date, you can actually look like you're paying attention and you really care about what's going on, okay? So we don't want the phone there and we want to keep eye contact throughout this conversation. Here's another point that becomes good when it comes to listening. This might feel a little bit unnatural to you if you haven't tried it before. But a great way to kind of do this when you're listening to someone and they're talking to you about whatever the story is to lean forward. You're closing that distance between you and the other person, and it makes it a little bit more intimate. Now, obviously, you don't have to take it overboard. You don't have to overextend yourself and be across the table, right? It can even be something very subtle, and if your back hurts, that's something that's that big a deal. But it's something I want you thinking about, right, to elicit a feeling. Because remember, all of this energy stuff we're talking about is really just a feeling that you can elicit within other people by taking particular actions. So when you add up a couple of things over the course of time, you'll start to really make someone feel like you care, like you're paying attention, like this conversation matters, okay? So eye contact, we have leaning in. Now, the other thing that might sound a little bit strange to you, small reactions. So I'm going to give you an example of what small reactions look like so that you can understand what I mean when I'm saying this in terms of listening. So in our first example, let's imagine you're telling me a story and we're on a date. I'm going to show you first what no reaction looks like. So you're telling me a story about your life and your history, and I'm like this. Yeah, you get the eye contact. You see that I'm, hearing what you're saying and it looks like I'm paying attention, but my stale face gives you a slightly uncomfortable feeling, right? Just the blank stare makes you feel like, I don't know if you're actually listening to what I'm saying or if you're just kind of like in la la land somewhere, right? And see, this is the thing about energy and aura, however you want to describe it. Small little minute details like that might not be something that you can actually pay attention to and see because you're you. So you're just giving things out, not realizing what you're giving out. But it's things that other people pick up on, and then they create a scenario or a thought in their mind based on these small little gestures. So that blank stare might not necessarily be a bad thing to you. You might actually be listening, but you don't realize that someone else, the person across from you, the man across from you, is interpreting that as, is she uncomfortable? Is she not paying attention? Is this a weird conversation? Should I stop sharing? And all of that going through his mind will take him out of the illusion, so to speak, that we want to put him in. I should even say not illusion, the trance that we want to put him in. We want to put him in a trance where he's not thinking about anything else except, this is the conversation I want to be in. This is the person I want to talk to. I want to be present here, and I want to yap as much as I possibly can because this is an amazing feeling to be around this person. Okay. So let me give you in a scenario number 2, what good listening is with small reactions. So imagine you're telling me a story and this is my reaction. Now you feel like, as you're telling the story, I know it's kind of awkward when I'm here in the TV screen and I'm looking at you, but now when you're telling the story, it feels a lot like I'm actually following along with what you have to say. I'm paying attention to what you have to say, and I'm taking in this information, okay? Something as small and minute as that, even though it feels kind of like, is it really that big a deal? Those are the small things that add up to someone saying, whoa, I love talking to you. You feel like home to me. I love sharing with you. I love being around you, versus being like, nah, she's kind of meh. She doesn't really make me feel anything. Because remember, we're not just taking men on a slope like this. That's a plain linear slope here. We're taking men on a roller coaster of emotions. So you want that euphoria to be filling him with joy and emotion when he's with you in person, right? So what's another way of bad listening, okay? Looking away is bad listening. When I say looking away, see, this can be a mistake that happens. And trust me, it's happened to me. So I'm trying to help you avoid this mistake. If you take a position in a restaurant and you sit down with a guy and there's a lot of action going on behind him, you're gonna have to be extra meticulous about, despite the fact there's a lot of stimulus around while you guys are having conversation, try your best not to allow the stimulus to distract you. Have you ever been on a date where someone's kind of talking to you and literally the entire time they're talking to you, they're like looking off to the side? So they're like, yeah, so the other day I was literally doing a thing, and yeah, I was like at the store, and when I went to the store, there was like these random people over here, and it just made me kind of feel like, when they're doing that, even as they're talking, you're almost like distracted because you're like, I'm confused. Is there something going on behind me that I'm missing? Is there a whole scene, should we even be having this conversation? Because I feel like this is very interesting, whatever's going on behind you. So the reason I say that, it's another one of those things that can feel very like subtle in the sense that like, oh, I'm paying attention to what he's saying, but I'm just like looking at this. There's like a really weird couple over here, right? That's a problem though. Because see, when we want to elicit a feeling, we don't want him in his mind thinking, what is she looking at? Am I disinteresting? Should I stop sharing? Am I unimportant? That is the absolute worst thing we want for this date. We want to make him feel unimportant. We want to make him feel like you're present in this conversation. So when you have stimulus, make sure you're focused in. It's going to be hard if you get distracted easily. But if you know you get really distracted, then my advice is for you to face the area that has less stimulus, so the wall. Overall body language, in the sense that if leaning in and making small gestures is obviously going to make him feel interested, then obviously if you're in a place where you seem like, oh, I barely want to be here, right? I'm like, you can be relaxed, but you look like you just don't really care to be here. This isn't really an important event for you. Your body language can also show that on accident. And so when we're talking about small reactions, obviously body language would include having that blank stare instead of actually looking like you're present in this conversation, okay? Point number 5 in conversation. Now, what do we want here in conversation? This is the thing. A lot of people will be here. This is where a majority of people are in conversation with whoever they're talking to, whether it be a friend, whether it be a brother or sister, whether it be a guy or a coworker, a woman coworker, whoever it may be. A lot of people end conversation in terms of the depth that they go into their conversation here. Now, there's something that's a little bit deeper than that, obviously, which is where things can get a little personal, in questions that are like really pertaining to you and your life specifically, your home life, your family life, your dating life, and things like that, right? Then you have another level, which is kind of like what we can describe as deeper desires, okay? Now, when I'm talking about deeper desires, things that you regularly wouldn't be talking to other people about because it's just not something that's on the front of relevant conversation. And we'll describe that in a little bit. Then we have like the deepest tranche here, which is child trauma or things like that. Super big fears, things that you're just really never going to be telling anyone except basically your therapist, right? There would just be no real reason to be having conversation like this for the most part with most people. So the reason that I made this kind of a funnel like this is because it kind of works like this in a sense of with people, majority of them are going to stay up here. Most people will never get down here in conversation. Either it will be too uncomfortable, it'll be too weird, or in some cases, it'll just be inappropriate for that type of relationship or friendship, whatever the case may be. So the reason that I'm saying this is because if we want to make sure that you give off the right energy that is going to make men fall in love with you, we want to make sure we're doing the opposite of what everyone else is doing. So if everyone else is staying right around this level and maybe a few people will get over here, you want to be the first person in his life to embrace this down here, okay? Right? And what do I mean by embrace this down here? See, when you're having conversation with someone, understand that from the very beginning, you're creating an environment, and especially you as a woman, you are very good at creating an emotional environment. That emotional environment gets put into place from the very beginning of when you start talking to a man and when you start meeting him. So what do I mean by that? And how do you kind of put this into work when you're dating guys and when you meet them in person? You want to, from the very beginning, say, oh, I love hearing stories about, people, and I love hearing stories about their life. Oh, this thing that you told me that was so interesting. Can you tell me more about this? This is one of the things you want to start off with from the very beginning when you're creating an environment. I'm super non-judgmental. I know that everyone goes through things. I know everyone makes mistakes. Like, I'm not someone that expects people to be perfect. So don't worry about telling me things. I'm not going to tell anyone. I'm not going to use it against you. I actually really enjoy hearing honesty from you. In fact, hearing honesty from you makes me feel so much closer to you, makes me so much more interested in you, makes you so much like more of a real person. I want to meet real, authentic you. You see how everything you're saying here is actually setting in place an environment for getting this deep here. Okay? Because you're not going to get there, obviously, right from the beginning. But you're going to gradually make your way here by prefacing, hey, I love getting to this place, right? When we can get to this place right here, oh boy, this is a magical place. Being up here, boring. I don't want that. I want to be over here. Let's talk about what you really care about. Let's talk about things you never talk about. Let's be in this area here. When you're encouraging that, then as you get deeper and deeper and deeper on this date, right, you can actually make it easier and easier for him to say, okay, so I was feeling a thing where I'm going to tell you the truth. I hate my job. I hate my job. I hate my work. I hate my boss. I never told anyone this because I don't like to complain. And see, it's good. When you can get here, now you're doing something very important, because remember, we're combining all of these things at once. You can combine your listening skills with your ability to make him feel important, with the feeling that you're trying to elicit, like you're paying attention, like you're here, like you're present, like all this good stuff. And you're getting deeper and deeper and deeper in conversation with him, doing something that no one else regularly does. Now we're creating this aura and energy about you that really can't be recreated by anyone else in his life, right? We're kind of stacking all of these tactics on top of each other so that we can get to a place that is very, very magical, okay? So point number 6 is Parrot. Now, you're probably wondering, what do I mean by Parrot, and how are you supposed to pair it properly? How does that affect anything that we're doing here? See, what I want you to do when you go on your dates, part of being an active listener is also showing someone that you're listening by repeating back to them exactly what they just said. So You don't have to be perfectly saying, okay, well, I'm going to pay. What exactly was that last word in that last sentence that you said? I need to repeat it back word for word. That's not what you need to do. All I want you to do is when he's sharing with you a story, when he's talking about his life, when he's talking about his experiences, I want you to take in the story. So you're going to have to actually pay attention to this. Then when you're going to ask your next follow-up question, I want you to repeat back to him one of the things he mentioned in his previous story, his previous experience, and use that to kind of funnel into your next follow-up question. Let me give you an example of what that looks like. So let's say for the sake of argument, he's saying, yeah, so honestly, I've been really stressed out because at work, I've been thinking about switching companies, but I just don't know if this other company is going to have a good work environment and going to give me the same vacation days. So I'm just kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place because I don't know if I want to switch, but I'm also very unhappy. Let's say that's the story that he's telling you. Now you want to ask a follow-up question of like, okay, so what do you want to do and envision for your next 5 years in terms of your career? You say, so I remember how you were saying that you're really unhappy with your career as it stands now, and that the new job that you're going to go to is kind of like really uncertain. But like overall, what do you want for the rest of your life? Like, do you want to or envision yourself working in a career or in a company that could grow to this particular level, or in a position of management or as a director? Or do you see yourself in a completely different field? You see how I took the experience that someone talked about and referred to, repeated it back, and then put it into or flowed it into the next follow-up question. What you're doing there is on a subconscious level showing him that you're actively listening to what he has to say, because you're repeating back to him information that he just told you, whether it be today on this date or whether it be from a date previously, from a couple of days ago or a couple of weeks ago. What that communicates to men subconsciously without you having to say it is I actually care about what you're having to say. And I'm actually taking it in when you're speaking to me. It seems very subtle, but it communicates something very, very important. Remember that feeling that we want to elicit in men, that they're important, that they matter, that you're interested in this conversation, that you're present here, that you have nothing else on your mind. You're communicating that when you do things like this. The reason I'm calling it parroting is obviously because you're kind of parroting back the information to him in a way that shows him you're obviously listening. Our point number 7 is about stories, okay? Now, when it comes to stories, what I want from you is something very, very important. See, when you're not with a man, this can be a very tumultuous time in your life, meaning you can be very uncertain about how you want to be presenting yourself because you're uncertain of what you need to be giving him to give the type of energy that's going to make him obsessed with you and fall in love with you. What we don't want, okay, let's start off with what we don't want. We don't want you. Remember how we talked about the roller coaster of emotions, and we want to make him feel like you're very interested when you're in person and more disinterest when you're not together. We don't want this process of you guys not being together to actually just feel like a flat plane in itself. See, this is the mistake. You start off, you got your good morning, good night, what you doing, right? All of these type of things, right? This creates that flat plane that we're talking about, right? That creates a very flat kind of, yeah, we're here, we're talking, we're existing, kind of boring, whatever, she's here, I might want to talk to someone else, this is unstimulating. I don't want you to give that feeling. Even when it comes to the times where you guys are not together, we want there to be ebbs and flows. Let me explain this to you. This is awesome. So obviously, you're not going to be texting him 24/7. If you've watched my show for any period of time, you're not going to be on the phone texting 24/7. You have other things to do. So there will be times where he feels like you are not interested, right? We'll just put an X here, right? The times where you're not going to be texting him back because you're not going to be texting him back 24/7. But obviously, we live in a new era, meaning texting is a part of our lifestyle. So when you do text this man and you want to take him through these peaks and valleys, what we want to do for you, and this is going to sound kind of weird, right? We want to attach some pictures and some videos to create those peaks and those valleys. Obviously, those peaks and those valleys, right? The valleys are going to come when you're not responding. And those peaks, can you see that? Yeah. And those peaks are going to come when you're telling him a story. Now, this is going to sound kind of strange here. This is going to sound kind of strange here because you're thinking to yourself, wait, I'm supposed to become a story. I'm supposed to be a writer now. I'm supposed to. This is what I want you to do. I want you to use your pictures and videos to tell stories of things that you've been doing. Why? Because stories are a lot more interesting than this. Texting someone, good morning, good night, what you doing today? Oh, I'm at work, having a good day, I'm just cooking, that's boring as hell, okay? Nobody's gonna find that interesting. This, even though this is kind of like uncertain, right? When you're not responding, when you're doing things, when you're going places, when you have things to do, even though this is anxiety inducing, what is euphoric is to have you pop back up with some pictures and videos of where you've been for the past hour or what you've been doing. Right? It's a lot more stimulating and memorable to go through this experience with a woman, even when you guys aren't together, versus going through this experience with a woman, right? I'm just telling you this from an opposite perspective. So what do we want? Why am I saying pics and videos? One, because images are always more powerful than words, okay, on a screen. And number two, these pictures and videos can always be attached to a story. So let me give you an example of what I mean. When you go to your hot yoga class, maybe you take a 10-second video of you finishing up the hot yoga class, whether you're in a pose or whether you're just taking a selfie or whether you're just taking a video of the steam room or the sauna or the whatever it is. And you send it to him like, oh, I know I didn't respond for the last hour, but I'm just sending you a picture of this sauna or this steam room that I'm in. This place looks so beautiful. This place is so crazy. I'm sweating so much. This is crazy. Okay. These are always, whenever you can attach a story and give an image, always more powerful for your romantic partner, especially to make you stand out more, make you be more memorable, and take him through a little bit more of these peaks and troughs. And like I said before, it doesn't have to be a toxic thing. It doesn't have to be oh, I'm not going to message him back for exactly 93 minutes and 35 seconds because I know I need to take some time. No, it doesn't have to be that. It's just living your life and understanding, okay, at this time, I'm enjoying myself. I'm present in the place that I am. I'm doing hot yoga. I'm at the gym. I'm going for a run. I'm whatever it is that I'm doing. I'm going to be present here and not worry about texting my guy back. Not worrying about whether or not he has anxiety, because during this time, I want there to be a valley of anxiety. I want there to be a valley of mystery, of uncertainty. That's okay. I'm doing something that I needed to do anyways. So what I'm not going to worry about is whether or not he has anxiety. I'm going to let his anxiety stew if it's going to stew. Then when I'm ready to come back and text because I actually have time, because I'm actually available, he'll get a story from me of what I've been doing. Then he'll get to talk to me for a little bit. And then once again, once I start doing my next thing, he'll go through his peak and his valley.